Emmanuel here with a quick take talking about how countries get wealthy. I hope I'm visible, audible. Check it out. Let's talk about wealth from the perspective of knowledge and the intensity of knowledge, right? Ricardo Hausman, economist, holds it that wealth is directly correlated with the intensity of knowledge in this way. The more knowledgeable a group of people are, right, the more difficult to replicate the products they make are, right, given that those products have a demand in the market, the wealthier that group of people will be. How? Because adding value requires more knowledge, right? Intuitively speaking. So then how can a government induce the emergence of knowledge? Well, how does knowledge appear in an economy? How does all this happen? Firstly, we can start upstream of knowledge, where knowledge is generated through research. You have scientists that conduct research and generate scientific knowledge, the proxy for which is the quantum of research generated. So, for example, research papers. Then the next step is they have these papers and they create patents out of these research papers, right? Technical patents on how to do something. And then with these patents, people are trained on how to carry out that specific high value activity. When they're trained to carry out that specific high value activity, some entrepreneurs put together those people with that knowledge and capital, and they produce some very, very complex product, right? And what we just went through is 4 different types of knowledge. You have your scientific knowledge, you have your knowledge in the form of patents, you have your occupation, and then you have your products. So the question then becomes, what's going on with knowledge at all these levels? Starting at the very top, we have recipes that are generated through research, right? It's a recipe. This is how to make or cook this particular thing. And I use recipe metaphorically. The next step is that this knowledge is put into bodies, right? It is embodied. Now, speaking abstractly, embodied knowledge exists in both tools and people. So you can move these tools and people around, and you can move these recipes around even electronically. So embodied knowledge and codified knowledge, the recipes, can actually be moved physically around or digitally anywhere around the globe. Now, important distinction. Embodied knowledge cannot be moved digitally, but codified knowledge can. And then we move on to the final important type of knowledge, tacit knowledge. This is knowledge that's gained through experience. It's not just training, right? It's not just in some tool. It's not in some machine. It's in the experience that someone has, an entrepreneur, a technician, an engineer, building some kind of a product. Now, tacit knowledge is the final frontier in knowledge, right? In any knowledge value chain. And the thing about tacit knowledge is it doesn't just fit in one single head. It's not located in one person. It's located in a network of people and a network of activities. What does that mean? While it could be easy, and if someone could afford it, they could move all kinds of embodied knowledge and codified knowledge all around the world, right? Sometimes at considerable expense, right? For example, if you had to move a semiconductor factory from, I don't know, say Taiwan and build one in Kenya, you're probably going to spend about $18 billion. And that's before you even ask questions about whether the water in the area is pure enough for the factory and other questions like that. Now, here's what else, the other mystery about tacit knowledge that shows how difficult it is to just transplant activities. If you want to build a semiconductor factory, well, you're going to find that there's not many firms that know how to do that. And the firms that do know how to do that, sometimes they might have folded. They generally, the key here is these firms are not always working. So there's not always fabrication, semiconductor fabs for them to build. There's not always factories, high-tech factories for them to build. So if you want to bring them around to do a job, you're going to pay a lot of money again. And this more so if they're moving to a geographic location in which they do not normally operate. And then in addition to that, they've got to move the equipment and the raw materials that they use in order to build, right? That's the tacit knowledge involved in the construction of the factory, even before you ask about the tacit knowledge involved in the creation of that product, in this case, the semiconductor chip. This tells us that it's going to be very expensive to try and spend public money in a private venture geared towards high knowledge intensive products, right? What does this mean? That governments around the world that are trying to spend money to build a Silicon Valley are going to find it prohibitively costly. Most of the time they will fail. They will keep draining public funds, speaking intuitively, draining public funds and trying to build these semiconductor labs and failing. Or more generally trying to build technopolises, right? All over the place. It's just a call to humility and to try and understand what is going on with knowledge and how it is that we can build more prosperous economies by understanding the dynamics of knowledge. Cheers, man. I got questions.